Coming up on MacBreak Weekly, Leo is out this week, but I am standing in to talk to Andy, Renee, and Lori. We've got a great show for you. First, we talk about Apple making that reduction 30% to 15% on its App Store commission for small businesses, plus Apple's decision to delay its new privacy features in the wake of Facebook's complaints, some potential interesting stuff going on with some iPads and concealed carry permits, plus so much more, including updates to iOS and a fix for that iPhone 12 mini, the beauty and glamour that is the camera of the new iPhone 12 Pro Max, and last, we round things out with a little bit of Apple M1 talk and our picks of the week. It's all that plus so much more coming up on MacBreak Weekly. MacBreak Weekly is brought to you from Twit's LastPass Studios. We know you're focused on security, but are your employees? Well, LastPass can ensure that they are by making access and authentication seamless, whether employees are working in the office or remotely. Visit lastpass.com/twit to learn more.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
This is MacBreak Weekly, episode 741, recorded November 24th, 2020, comparing apples to bananas. This episode of MacBreak Weekly is brought to you by Peak Design. They've just launched their 10th campaign on Kickstarter, Mobile by Peak Design, an ecosystem of cases, mounts, and accessories that make your phone a better tool for everything you do, including the new iPhone 12. To learn more, go to peakdesign.com/twit. And by LastPass. Give your IT and security leaders control of password security with the award-winning LastPass. Visit lastpass.com/twit to find out how they can help you. Welcome to MacBreak Weekly. I am not Leo Laporte. Surprise. I am Micah Sargent. Leo is on vacation this week, but I am here to talk all things Mac, all things iOS, all things tvOS, all things HomePod, all things Apple TV. It's all the things. It's all the things to do with Apple. And of course, if we're going to talk all things Apple, we've got to talk it with some of the best folks in the business. Up first, we have iMore's own Lori Gill. Hello, Lori. How are you?
Hi, Micah. How's it going?
It's going well. I didn't want to give you a promotion, and so I wanted to make sure that I remembered correctly. Yes, managing editor at iMore.
Managing editor, that's me.
To be clear, I would love to give you a promotion, but I just don't know that I have that power. So, yeah, managing editor at iMore, Lori Gill, a.k.a. Appleaholic. As we all know, because I still haven't wrung Twitter's neck enough to get them to change.
I'm just too lazy to do anything about it.
We are also joined by the ever delightful, the ever loquacious, and the metaphorical masterpiece. In that his metaphors are great, not that he himself is a metaphorical masterpiece. It's Andy Anatko, WGBH. How are you?
I'm moderately neato, trending towards extremely neato. However, it's only mid-afternoon in the East Coast as we speak. Things can go up or down. Although there is a burger, a bacon cheeseburger in the offing for dinner, so I'm betting on up.
Good. Well, we will hope to continue that trend upward as we continue that trend upward geographically, or north at least, to the great flat. I don't even know about Canada's geography, but I know who can tell me. It's Renee Ritchie, or / Renee Ritchie, as he says, which is where you can find him on all the places, right?
As much as I adore Leo, you are absolutely adorable, Micah, and I'm so happy to be doing the show with you.
Well, thank you, Renee. I am happy to be doing the show with you as well. And boy, howdy, is there not a lot? Is there not a little bit to talk about? No, because there's so much to discuss. And I thought that we could start with something that has been in the works for a while, has been a conversation that has taken place over time, but finally seems to be getting somewhere. And that is Apple's plans to reduce its App Store commission from 30% to 15% for small businesses, aka those that make less than $1 million in a year, I believe is the qualifier. as of January 1st of this coming year. Are we feeling good about this? Are we feeling bad about this? Is $1 million too small an amount? Is it too great an amount? One of you can be the first to discuss it.
I think this was a really great move on Apple's part to sort of make amends and make things right for as many developers as possible, because this is the largest number of developers are going to fit into this category. I think the numbers were saying something like 98% of developers that make money off of apps, off of app purchases, make less than $1 million a year. So that's a huge group of people. I also think it's a little bit interesting that they left out developers that make more than $1 million. I don't know why they decided to do that, other than obviously making more money off of the people that make more money.
Yeah, that is kind of curious, because it seems as though I do support lower spiffs off of Apple, especially for the people for whom it matters the most. But then again, you also have the people at the very, very top of the range, like Netflix, who can say, yeah, 30% off of every single thing doesn't really work for us. We need to negotiate a lower rate for you. And somewhere in the middle, there are the developers that are certainly doing well. But the thing is, the people who are making more than $1 million are probably not the two people at a kitchen table sort of shop. These are people who have like office space, or at least in the before times they have employees, they have actual like ongoing expenses. So just the fact that they're making more than $1 million doesn't mean that they don't have like a very, very slim bottom line and that they wouldn't appreciate getting a slower cut. But this will definitely at least make them. It's a good move for them. It's for the developers, good move for them PR wise. Very good move as both with the EU and the United States prosecutions and investigations on market dominance. The one thing that Apple is consistently working against is, hey, we control this app market. Developers have absolutely no choice but to pay whatever Apple asks. At least they can say, hey, look, the industry average is like 30%. We're paying more than 98% of our developers are paying 15% of royalty. The only thing they're left to be sort of checked out is that it's not as though you automatically get the lower rate. You have to apply for it, and then Apple will approve it. Supposedly, maybe. We don't know yet if it's literally they just simply check how much money you're making and then just simply rubber stamp it, or if they decide that, yeah, we'd much rather have you stick at the 30%. But thank you very much for getting in touch. We love you.
Yeah, I think it's mostly because they don't want to have a company with 5 apps suddenly become 5 companies with 1 app each. So they're gonna police that part. So my whole thing is that I would never, not for a minute, suggest that Apple is fiendishly clever in its intricacies and has created a Machiavellian masterpiece of a plot to beautifully score the PR coup on the one side.
2 hippies in a garage, everybody. 2 hippies in a garage.
But also at the same time, very neatly carve away the sort of hyper-manipulative situation that Tim Epic from Fortnite and Spotify were doing, where they were trying they are billion-dollar companies that very much want to be Apple and Google and sort of become the gatekeepers, but their PR strategy was to say they were fighting for the little developer. I keep maintaining they were fighting for space on the little developer's neck, but they were definitely fighting for something. And this sort of really, at best, at worst, it splits loyalties and kind of highlights that there is a disparity of power, not only between Apple and their developers, but the ones when Andy mentioned, where you have Netflix and Amazon on one side, and you have the indies on the other side, and then you have these sort of wannabe big tech companies in the middle. And if nothing else, it added a couple new dimensions to our 4D chess game.
Yeah, I think one of the things that, you have to take into consideration whenever you make a change like this is what communications did you have up to this point? What assertions did you make up to this point? And I think that plays a role in how you go forth in what kind of cut we're talking about. Because if Apple, they've been talked to and asked about that 30% cut before and continuously said, this is the industry standard. We think it's fair, given what this is our store and the part that we play in this. And so to then make a change at all, if it's just a complete change, people could look to that and say, okay, well, that's you admitting that you didn't feel that, you needed that 30% to run the store, that you needed that to pull this off. And so to kind of going back to Lori, your question, I think that plays a role in that question of, why were some businesses left out? Because kind of Renee's saying there, where there's, 4D chess, 5D chess, whatever, the sixth dimension is that you can say, we really do need this 30%. We're just being nice with these people
for COVID,
who make less
they
than
did it for 2020 relief, right? Like they didn't say it was like they were just doing it. They said because 2020 has been so hard on these particular developers.
No, so I did not hear that part. So does that mean are we speaking to an expiration date on this? Apple's
they didn't say an expiration date.
Small business program.
They were just sort of into the messaging. They were saying they realized how hard 2020 was being on developers. And there was two interesting sets of math that was run. Ben Thompson ran the math and said that at 15%, depending on how much you charge for your app, it really does approach, in some cases, go slightly under, in some cases, go over what Stripe would charge for just processing fees, which means that's considerable savings for those developers. And that is really changing the game in terms of a premium versus a processing fee. And then John Gruber also pointed out that because you lose status like the next year, but it takes you a year to gain status, that there will be some developers who are like, maybe I should stop selling for a month just so I don't go over come December, which I think is problematic in terms of how it's not an ideal implementation of the idea that they put together.
Mm-hmm. So I've heard that argument or thought put forth. I suppose I wonder, though, given that this has been the status quo, these companies have done, these developers have done what they've done so far with that 30%. So do we not look to this 15% change as just this is something that now you will get? That's the part that I question in terms of the potentially making $1 million in a year and then not being able to switch to that 15%. Were you able to do okay with the 30% thus far? So when the 15% comes, that's just a whole new world, a dazzling place. Yeah, frosting. Yeah, exactly. I don't know. Obviously that's not an argument I can make. I'm not an app developer, but I do wonder about that kind of thought in particular, given that everybody right now is doing 30% until January 1st. And I think that, Lori, we can look to a lot of these apps that are well known among us as ones that will be very comfortably within the small business program. I mean, you have done the great work of talking to a lot of app developers, iOS app developers in particular. And so I'm kind of curious, I'm sure that there are a few that you could name even that folks well know of, but are going to fall underneath that mark, given the fact that they, make less than $1 million in a year.
Yeah, I think this is this is big news and a big deal for, a lot of developers. 98% of developers that are making money on the App Store that have in-app purchases. They're not the freebies that are just ad revenue or data sharing stuff, like the ones who actually make money from either in-app purchases or the App Store itself. That's a huge portion of the developer population. And there's a lot of people who fit within that category and only a few that don't. It's the 2%, like it really is that kind of number that don't fit into that category. But I think just like what Andy and Renee is saying, it's what Apple has implemented. It's problematic in what's to come. If somebody's going to just turn off sales in December because they don't want to go above the $1 million mark, that's bad. That's just bad, a bad experience for, the App Store. Mm-hmm. If, there's companies that are going to try to split their apps into separate companies so that they can still fit within, fit under the mark, then that's just kind of trying to play against the game or something like that. Those are all bad things. So I keep thinking of, I used to work at a movie theater, and the way the way the theaters would do things, and I'm assuming it's still the same way, is that the movie goes into the theater and it starts at a very high percentage. I think it's something like 50% of profits made go to the distribution company. So then every week it goes down. So the longer you keep that movie in the theater, the lower that percentage is. So you get more percent, your theater get more percentage of that movie if you keep it in the theater longer. So really popular movies that are going to, they've got nominations for Oscars and things like that, they become really profitable for the movie theater because they are in the theater for a longer time. So they're getting more money off of that. And I've always thought that seems like a really good idea, because what we know to be true is that apps are usually the most revenue comes in when that app is brand new and it's getting a lot of marketing. The team is out there pushing it, letting everybody know about it. Bloggers are writing about it. It's getting a lot of attention in its first beginning stages. And that's when Apple could take the most from them. And then the longer it's in the App Store, then the price goes down. And to me, that seems like it makes the most sense, because it allows the developers to sort of continue making money. And then, as time goes by and less people are buying these apps, they're actually getting more money off of the percentage of it. And it's sort of balancing out for them as developers. And you don't have that same problem that comes along of, a developer who wants to make less than $1 million so that they can stay at 15%. So I don't know. They clearly did their research and they've decided that this is a good way for them to do it. But I've always kind of thought it makes more sense to start reducing your percentage the longer you've been in the App Store.
Renee, as is my way, I tend to like to ask questions that may put someone on the spot a little bit. I'm curious.
Yes, counselor.
Given your, long studied history of Apple and kind of the way that the App Store has shaped over time, as a thought experiment here, would there be changes that you would think? Is it a matter of communication and better communication? Is it a matter of, as Lori's, potential idea here, again, purely for thought experiment's sake, because what is. But do you think that this was the right way to go about it? Or are there any changes that you see that would improve upon this small business program to make it easier or more clear for developers?
Yeah, I think there's a two-part answer. One is that I would change the way that you qualify so that you don't lose it immediately and then have to spend another year regaining it. I would make just parity where you get it immediately and you lose it immediately, almost like a frequent flyers program. I think that would stop people having to worry about going over at the end of the year, then having to spend another whole year just getting back into it. But I think writ large, I'm going to give you the answer that makes literally everybody super angry at me, from Apple to developers, is that I still think the 30%, 15% is a massive distraction and red herring. And I'm sure developers are absolutely going to benefit from this. I don't want to take anything away from it. Money in James Thompson's pocket is money in all of our hearts. Like the more Rusty Shelf can spend for Christmas, the happier we all are. But the age of apps has changed. Like they were like the last one, like news. Back, I'm not going to include Lori in this, but back when Andy and I were young, news was expensive and CDs were expensive. Lori can be in for the CD part. And you bought DVDs and it was expensive. And one by one, everything has just been flattened down to a subscription. So now for basically $10, you get unlimited TV and movies, unlimited music, unlimited news. If you happen to be in one of the countries that has those programs, the value's been extracted from everything. News is basically worthless. Just Google anything you want. And apps, because they were sort of the last stage of consumable content, they were the last ones to hit this barrier. But ever since the advent of the Google Play Store and the App Store, they've become just as commoditized. They've gone from the same sort of manufactured scarcity to digital abundance. And it's going to be as hard on developers to face that transition as it was on people making wooden toys when the Hasbro factories went up, or any of us who are used to getting paid. Like I used to get paid thousands of dollars per article in print magazines. Those eras way over.
That was nice, wasn't it?
Like you can ask what bloggers get paid, but I mean, like it's just way over, and everyone is going to have to adjust. The whole market is changing, and I think absolutely I would give them everything. Give them demos, give them try, everything that they want, because I think they absolutely need it and deserve it. But I think the bigger discussion has to come when we do realize that apps are pop content now, and we start seeing them all go into, how many apps do you get for $10 a month sort of models.
Mm-hmm. Andy, in continuing the thought experiment, you're penning an op-ed on this change. What are is there anything that you would change about this, or any thoughts that you have on the way that this has been put forth?
I certainly like that Apple is being a little bit more flexible. One of the consistent problems that I have with Apple is when they really flash their bureaucratic proclivities, that they oftentimes, how many times in the past year or two have we been talking about things Apple has done that really seems as though, wow, they really screwed up there. And then when the affected party, whether it's a developer or whether it's a class of users, say that, oh, well, geez, why this was, I think you guys screwed up. You shouldn't have banned this entire company from the App Store. They will point to, oh, well, our traditional policy has been this. We can cite this part of the policy that is technically in violation. Therefore, we acted appropriately. Thank you for playing. And so it's good to see that Apple is loosening up from this dogmatic sort of approach to how it runs the App Store, where it's beginning to say that maybe 30% for everybody, but actually secretly not 30% for people who are big enough to throw their weight around. Maybe that policy is not working. Parenthetically, I would say that this is just, I'm not sure that this is the biggest problem that most developers have. I think with Apple and the App Store, I think they mostly have a problem with the transparency of how how App Store decisions are made. I think they have a problem with something when their app being approved, just rubber stamp approve, and suddenly it's denied. When they make a new edition, and they can't get a clear answer as to exactly why this version has been declined as an update, when the thing that they're flagging is something that they have allowed for this app specifically for the past 2 or 3 years. There are a lot of problems with the App Store. This is one of a six-pack. I'm glad that they're addressing one of them, but I hope this indicates that Apple is really trying to peel the apple and find out where the worms are and plucking them out.
I like that. That's a good. See, there it is. There's the metaphor.
Master.
All right. I walked right into that.
Thank you for our thoughts on that one, and for playing along with my little thought experiment there at the end. I appreciate that. Let's talk about Facebook, because everybody loves to talk about Facebook, right? Apple had announced quite a while ago now, I think, and you'll have to correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it started at WWDC with the introduction of, the next version of iOS and some of the features there, a change that would make it so that you had a more private browsing and usage experience rather. So I mean, just all together, your app usage and your browsing and all of this would be a lot more private, because it would help protect you against ad targeting. Facebook kind of screamed after this happened, and it was certainly heard around the world, both figuratively and literally, as Facebook sort of mobilized the advertisers on its platform to let them know, hey, this change is going to be an issue for you. Apple now has both defended the delay of this feature, which it announced it would be delaying the feature to give advertisers time to sort of pivot and figure out the next way that they will be doing the things they do. But in doing so, it also kind of talked about how Facebook and others have really chosen to get as much data as possible. And I want to read a little bit of this quote in this Bloomberg article. It says, and they're talking about Facebook, not only do they, Facebook and others, allow the grouping of users into smaller segments, they use detailed data about online browsing activity to target ads. Facebook executives have made clear their intent is to collect as much data as possible across both first and third-party producers to develop and monetize detailed profiles of their users. I don't know. I think that among us here, this is something that we are very well aware of, but given the number of times that the congressperson asked Facebook how they make money and Mark Zuckerberg had to say, we sell ads to that congressperson, I think that speaks to perhaps a larger majority of folks not knowing quite how much Facebook and others scoop up data. But does a letter that sort of blasts Facebook have the same teeth as actually shipping this feature that is supposed to help us? I don't know.
It's weird because like this is just par for the so I have so many feelings about this because initially Facebook didn't really complain. They put a snide sort of note in their partner program, which meant that, oh, this is really going to hurt you more than it's going to hurt us. Because they just thought that they would enjoy first-party privilege based on their cooking of every known website in the universe. And when it looked like maybe that would be, like basically what happens is you now get a pop-up saying, do you want to allow this cross-site tracking? And you have the same way of saying yes or no, like you would camera access or contacts access, anything like that. It's just a tracking prevention privacy setting. But that sort of morphed a little bit. I don't think it's unusual that Apple delayed it. They delayed sign in with Apple last year because developers just weren't ready. There were a bunch of edge cases that no amount of internal testing could predict. And rather than just screw a bunch of companies and users and some of the biggest platforms out there, they're like, okay, we'll extend it till January. And that's what they did. And then in January it came and it was fine. And this is the same thing. It's sort of like you never built your app to handle this. We didn't anticipate X, Y, and Z repercussions. So we'll just extend it to January so you have extra time. So I think protestations from some privacy groups aside, I think this is just responsible platform stewardship. The hard part is when you get to Facebook itself and the way that it accumulates data and the way that it's just, I forget, there was an article last week where it said that apps are being given SDKs in exchange for selling the data accumulated from the SDK, which again confers first-party privilege. So you might say, okay, it's fine for this app to have it, and you don't realize they're selling it to Facebook or to some other data broker anyway, based on your first party, never mind cross-site tracker blocking. So I think it's a huge problem in general, and it comes down to, for me personally, if you have a problem with people knowing about your business model, you should probably reassess your business model. And rather than complaining about Apple tracking you, Apple preventing the tracking, sell me the benefits. Like, this is what Google's done so much more effectively than Facebook. They can point to things and say, yes, we're taking your data, but look at how good our assistant is. Look at how great our maps are. Look at how well we identify your photos. And then you, as a grown butt adult, can say, yeah, I think it's worth it for me. And Facebook has been absolutely terrible in showing what we get out of any of the stuff that we give them. All we see is what they get. Maybe it's because they really don't give us much other than being invited to barbecues on continents we don't even live on. Sorry, pet peeve.
Wow. Amen. No, I appreciate that. Lori, thoughts?
Yeah, so basically just mirroring exactly what Renee said, which is that Apple was very smart to decide to delay this because if I remember back at WWDC, there was a lot of like business insider type conversations going on about what does this mean? And this is going to destroy a lot of companies, the way this is being implemented. And so Apple's saying, okay, well, we're going to give you a little bit more time to figure some other things out. So we want to protect the privacy of our users, but we understand what a negative impact is going to be on your company. And we don't want to be a monopoly. So we're going to try to work with you and try to make this happen. And I don't know exactly what that's going to look like and how this is going to help for advertising, ad agencies and ad data collectors and stuff like that. It might still be a company destroyer for some of them. But in terms of Apple sort of like putting Facebook on blast. I think this is a marketing move from Apple to defend themselves against these antitrust hearings. To be completely honest, I feel like they want to make sure that they're positioning themselves in a really good way so that as these hearings go along, Apple can point to some circumstances under which they were proving that they're protecting their users, and that these other companies are the ones that are, doing things wrong and trying to profit off of our privacy and things like that. I have a feeling this is going to come up in a hearing in the future. We're going to see this letter get brought up again someday in the future.
Is this going to destroy companies? It becomes very easy to, when you are, that is the move to make no matter what. If you are trying to save a thing, I mean, look at the way that, and I know this is what apples and oranges, not apples and apples, be it a Red Delicious or a Granny Smith.
Apples to bananas.
Apples to bananas, the comparison of Fortnite doing what it did, where it, spoke with some bigger words than maybe things ended up being. And so I'm curious, is this really going to destroy companies, or is this Facebook sort of mobilizing its troops in a way and also trying to keep itself from having to continue doing, as Renee, you point out, this is Facebook realizing that if you do a thing that means less tracking, that for as far as we can tell, as far as I can tell, based on my experience so far with the anti-tracking stuff that I have in place, makes my experience on the web and across apps and things better. If that's the case, then there's not a value proposition that I see of continuing things the way they are. And so, of course, Facebook is going to say, this is going to bring the end of everything. But is it? I mean, all of us have or do work in different forms of, published media and, news reporting. Is this a concern? Is this really going to bring the end of businesses? Facebook losing its incredibly detailed ability to track individuals. Andy?
I don't think Facebook can't be brought down. The government can't bring this damn thing down. Luke Skywalker channeling the Force cannot bring Facebook down. But
Baby Yoda could. Baby Yoda.
Yeah.
Millennials couldn't bring it down.
Cancel culture can't. Anyway, I think this is a smart choice for Apple to make, because we forget that it's not just Facebook that's going to be affected by this. There are a lot of apps that a lot of its bottom line is provided by the data that it provides to Google, the data provides to Facebook. It's not just the Facebook app and the Instagram app that channels data directly to Facebook and Instagram. They have partner programs with all kinds of little apps that, again, help those companies to either thrive and survive or just to make their bottom line. And so I thought it was very telling that part of what was in this letter was not necessarily that we think this. We're having second thoughts about whether this is a good idea or not, and focused more on we're giving affected apps a little bit more time to figure out how to live in a world in which these warnings are going to happen, and possibly modify their apps. It's so the only thing that I'm worried about is that it's going to take a little time for iPhone users to get used to the idea of getting these warnings, because the currency of all these free apps is data. And Renee's talked about transparency far better than I could have. I've always said that with Google, it is about the transaction. That I believe that Google has been getting better and better about explaining, here is what the transaction is. They're getting a lot more transparent about not just simply, well, here's a section of the settings where you can click on things on or off. When you I downloaded the new Google Pay app and a whole bunch of really cool features. If it's that allow it to give it better wallet features, so for instance, it will check your email. It will look inside your email for receipts. If you've been taking pictures of receipts in your camera roll, it can actually like find those. It can use some machine learning to identify that, oh, that's a picture of a receipt, and then use OCR to actually lift the data out of that receipt and add it to whatever it is that you're trying to track. But when you launch this app for the first time, it really does walk you through, here is what we're taking a look at, and here's what we can do with this data, and saying the stuff in plain English. Not all apps, or actually I would say not most apps, actually do that, and that's absolutely necessary. My only worry is that if Apple has the intended or unintended effect of making people think that every single time you see one of these pop-ups, people think of that as like a malware alert saying, oh my God, back up, uninstall. That's a problem. But I think overall, I think Apple's being very, very fair here. I think that this is something that is quite necessary. It's actually also a little bit risky on their behalf because the power of Facebook to simply say to really ruin Apple's day by saying that we are no longer Apple is restricting our ability to provide the free service that connects the world to its family, friends, and family, and delivers news and bipartisan information to the world. Therefore, we can no longer support the iPhone through an app. You'll have to do it through a website. That will not destroy the iPhone, but it will definitely ruin somebody's Tuesday inside Cupertino. That's for sure. But overall, this is an important thing for them to do. I hope they stick to their guns. But I'm also glad that they're respecting the fact that they're gonna need to give independent app developers time to think that maybe I should not use this framework provided by Google or Facebook. Maybe I can make sure that things are a little bit more transparent on my end, and maybe the money that I'm about to get is not really quite worth it.
I think that is well put. There's a lot to say, honestly, about not just this Apple and Facebook scuffle, but just the state of tracking and our privacy in general. And I think that one of the big things that I continue to sort of wrestle with as someone whose job is ostensibly to educate folks on technology and to try and improve their lives with technology and through the use of technology, helping them to understand just how important and how much their data is gathered, collected, tracked, and used across all these different apps. And, I think of my partner as an example of someone who, regularly comes to me and is like, I know you said this isn't a thing, but I swear they have to be listening to me. They have to be listening to me because I just got this ad and I know I didn't do a Google search for it, but yet I'm getting an Instagram ad about this thing. And, going through and looking at the history and trying to help him figure out where he may have typed in something or searched something or did something that then led to that being added to his profile. And then having that realization, click and go, holy moly, this is so much tracking, is one way of doing it. But I think that the vast majority of people don't know the extent, and I would argue that we don't necessarily know the extent to which these companies are truly collecting data about us and in the ways that they're collecting data. So it's something that I intend to continue to keep an eye on and try to educate about. And I know that, we can count on the same from all of you.
It's a big responsibility. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Lori.
Okay, just real quick, Micah, what you're saying speaks to kind of the exact problem with this sort of data tracking stuff is that we might know that Facebook is tracking our data and we might think, well, that's fine. I use Facebook. So in exchange, you can, build your online profile about me. But where the transparency falls apart and where we really don't know what's going on is that now Facebook might be sharing that information with the Republican Party or the Democratic Party or a real estate company who is now going to try to advertise to us. And that is where we didn't give that permission. We didn't say that you can share that information with somebody. We said we wanted to share it with you. And there's no transparency and no accountability when these companies are building these online profiles of us and where they're distributing that information to other people. And that, I think, I've said this many times before, that is what needs to be put in place. Not that complicated thing that you download from Google that has some weird information about everything that they know about you, but a very simple, straightforward. These are the ad companies that we share your information with. These are the the companies that they share your information with, so that you can go through and just have the option. And there's going to be a lot of people that they won't care, and they'll just be like, accept all and be done with it. But other people might think, I'm not okay with some of this. I'm okay with this and I'm okay with that, but I'm not okay with everything. And then there's other people who are going to say, wait, what? No, I'm not even going to use this service. But we don't really have that transparency to know what's going on.
Yeah. And Andy, why don't you round out this topic with your thoughts?
All I would wanted to add is that, Lori is right in that people don't. Micah, you had a really great example there, where that's a question I get a lot. I've gotten it on the air a couple of times, and about I know that you're not going to convince me that they don't. The microphone is not on all the time, and I have to be really, really careful, because, like I said, I've answered this question a couple times on the air. Once I screwed up by saying no, that's first. Let me rest your little head there. Now, if they were to keep the microphone open all the time, then it would keep the CPU open all the time, and your battery would run flat in 20 minutes. It's a logical and physical and engineering impossibility. And then they blew a sigh of relief. The reason why they were able to guess that you were interested in that is because, and I would explain all of the tracking they're doing, including that they knew that you had visited a friend of yours, and they don't know that you were interested in maybe getting a Peloton, but your friend has a Peloton, and they're very, very active there, and and based on a whole bunch of other data, they guessed that, well, because these two phones were in the same room, he was in the same room as someone who has a Peloton and is a big exercise person, perhaps they talked about it, and perhaps it's a good idea to start giving them like fitness ads or Peloton ads. But yeah, I agree with Lori. I've always said that, as impractical as this may be, I feel as though the only right way to solve this problem is to make it law that we're not giving you. You can collect this information from us if we allow you to. However, we are only giving you a license for that information that ends, let's say, in 1 year and has to be renewed. And I think most people, the vast majority of people, are not going to care to are going to automatically renew that license by just clicking on this button that's preventing them from seeing their cousin's new cat pictures. However, those of us who really care about that are going to be very, very aware of what that little dialog box means, and we're going to make sure we click on the light gray underlined link on the white on the light gray background that says, "No, you do not have my. Please delete the information you collected over the past year."
I have to say, I had a read. Oh yeah, please.
Yeah, I also, if you are willing to click on that button for Google and not Facebook, I would just ask if that's Apple's problem or Facebook's problem, especially when we wake up every morning and we look at sort of what's trending on Facebook compared to, what exists in the real world around us. I think they have issues beyond just the tracker prevention that they really need to clean up, and where a lot of tech companies have shown a willingness to at least engage on that. Facebook has been discussing how many people you have to threaten to behead before we actually remove your posts. So this, to me, is like way down on the list of things that they should be complaining about, but maybe high on the list of things they should really be thinking why the world doesn't trust them maybe the way they would like it to.
Amen. Very well put. Let us take a quick break while you all digest that last thought there. I want to tell you about Peak Design, who are bringing you this episode of MacBreak Weekly. Peak Design, you folks are absolute rock stars. And that is because Peak Design is so well known for its thoughtfully engineered and award-winning products that they've launched on Kickstarter. They come up with these really incredible, really innovative ideas. They take them to Kickstarter. They see what people want. And they come out with just beautiful, thoughtfully designed, well-engineered products. And this one is their 10th campaign on Kickstarter. It's called Mobile by Peak Design. Mobile is an ecosystem. It's not just one thing. It's not just two things. It's an ecosystem of cases, mounts, and accessories that make your phone a better tool for everything you do, whether it's photo and video creation or bike and motorcycle riding or working in the home and office. In Peak Design's words, you don't need more screen time. You need better screen time. It even works with the new iPhone 12 MagSafe system. Listen to this. I love this. These accessories use a proprietary magnetic mechanical locking system they call SlimLink. Get ready. This is about to get very interesting. SlimLink uses a precision machined piece of zirconia ceramic and an array of magnets to provide intuitive no-look connection, wireless charging compatibility, and hard locking security for extreme activities. Peak Design has embedded the SlimLink system into their new everyday phone case, and boy howdy is that a good-looking phone case. It is thin, it is slim, it is protecting of your device, and when you pair it with your mobile device, it opens up the incredible ecosystem of mounts and accessories. And that includes, this is such a long list, I think this is amazing, a rugged and handsome wallet with a built-in kickstand, a machined aluminum tripod with a buttery smooth ball head built specifically for mobile devices, charging and non-charging mounts for the dash of your car, heck yes, hard locking mounts for total security biking and motorcycle riding, a beautiful charging stand for your desk or bedside table, low profile wall mounts that put your phone exactly where you want it around the house, and a kit of adapters that mount your phone to those standard GoPro and Arca style systems, letting you create content with your phone just about anywhere. Oh, and by the way, you know the iPhone 12 with the new MagSafe system, that sound we like to make? Well, don't worry about it, because you can count on Peak Design's family of accessories to work seamlessly with all the iPhone 12 models. To learn more about the Mobile by Peak Design campaign and all the other amazing products they have, head to peakdesign.com/twit. Support Peak Design and visit peakdesign.com/twit. And of course, thank you, Peak Design, for making some incredible products, but also for sponsoring MacBreak Weekly and Twit. We appreciate it.
Mike,
all right.
Before you start, can I just praise you? You are the Michael Winslow of tech. Those were great. Those were great mouth-based sound effects.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
So
you painted a picture in my mind, and I'm ready.
I'm very glad to hear that. Now, Renee, I'd love to give you a cookie, but I'm going to need you to give me an iPad first.
iPad for a cookie? That sounds fair.
All right.
That sounds fair. Is that really how cheap cookies go? I mean, I know guns go real cheap in America, but is that really how cheap cookies go for in America? Just an iPad?
See, it's a data tracking cookie, so it's actually worth like $1 million.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Anyway.
I thought we were talking about the San Jose Sheriff's Office. Sorry if I got ahead of us.
Yes, you're perfectly right there. I just was throwing it back for some reason. No, let's talk about this. So the county undersheriff, which I didn't realize that was a thing. I thought it was like deputy, but apparently that's the same thing. You can be an undersheriff. That means you're just deputy sheriff.
Is that a WWE star? The undersheriff?
Undersheriff. Oh. A grand jury has indicted the Santa Clara County undersheriff, a sheriff's captain, a local business owner, an insurance broker named Harpreet Chadha, and also the head of global security for Apple, Apple's chief security officer, Thomas Moyer, on charges of, or being accused of requesting bribes and then for offering bribes. So requesting bribes on the part of the undersheriff and Captain James Jensen, and then offering bribes on the part of the insurance broker and Apple's chief security officer. The alleged incident involves basically that the security folks wanted to have permits for carrying concealed firearms, and the undersheriff and sheriff's captain are alleged to have said, well, if you want us to give you these concealed firearms licenses, then we're going to need something in return. So not quite cookies. That's a whole different thing.
But it was iPads, right?
But it was iPads, yeah.
Lots of them.
According to this document from the County of Santa Clara's Office of the District Attorney, the promised donation of 200 iPads worth close to $70,000 was scuttled at the 11th hour just after August 2nd, 2019, when Sung and Moyer learned of the search warrant that the district attorney's office executed at the sheriff's office, seizing all its CCW license records. So
Micah,
this is
can I
a
read
bit
a
of
statement from Alex
intrigue.
Lindsay into evidence because he's not here?
Yes,
he did issue a
please do.
statement. Yes.
Yes. Let's
So
hear
this
it.
is from Alex Lindsay, one of the founders of MacBreak Weekly. He said, and I quote, "As the son of a former federal prosecutor, indictments are prosecution-leaning decisions and not a good indicator into what actually happened or whether it will go anywhere. There's just enough evidence to take it to court and score political points. I don't think anyone is going to be tracking this case next week." Alex Lindsay.
Interesting. In 1 week, he thinks it's going to be over.
I don't know enough about the law, so I wanted to at least get, another American on the panel here for MacBreak Weekly.
And one who has a little bit more
it'll be forgotten about
knowledge.
next week because Epic is probably going to do something to change the course of the conversation. So,
I mean, okay, there's a little bit of, regardless of whether this is going to be tracked next week, there certainly is a little bit of CW drama here in terms of you hear that, that the alleged incident involves a search warrant happening to get these CCW licenses at the same time that these this donation of iPads that was supposed to be gathered together was like, oh no, we're undoing this. So I can understand from the perspective of folks looking into this, why it's picking up a little bit of attention, because it does have a little bit of drama and, I guess, glitz. I don't know what else to use. A little bit of drama and shiny in the sense
But
that
Apple in the headline.
Yeah, and Apple's in the headline, of course. So whether or not these, I think that this is, kind of the argument that could be made is that regardless of the CCW licenses that these iPads were going to be donated, it has just an actual just a donation unrelated to the concealed firearms licenses. But overall, it is not a great thing to think that the folks in charge of giving out concealed firearms licenses are using something other than the proper rules and regulations to grant said firearms licenses.
What did other people give them? Like a mango whip from Disney? I want to know the full extent of the goods and services that they bartered for these licenses.
Yeah. Oh man, maybe there's
Pineapple
like
Dole Whip,
a coupon for a free dog grooming for the security officer at.
Like, was there a pumpkin spice latte moratorium called in exchange for the services? I don't know.
Oh man, somebody didn't have to pay for a Disney Plus subscription. They got a year for free.
Well, I don't want to make light of this. It's a real investigation, and I'm sure real serious lawyers and judges will take advantage of it. For us, it's just it's another thing to deal with in 2020, along with murder hornets and everything else we've had to put up with. Yeah. So again, I don't want to make light of it. It's just it seems like a fun headline.
This definitely reminds me of The Wire, the TV show The Wire.
Thank you.
In that it's this sort of I don't mean backdoor dealing in this sort of dark way, but I can imagine, a chief security officer talking on the phone with an undersheriff, and they're just having a good conversation, and the undersheriff is like, gosh, we really could use some more iPads around here. And the chief security officer is like, you know what, we have a donation program that we can help you out with. All you got to do is apply for things, and I bet we can, knock it out of the park really quickly. And you know what, we need some license to carry firearms, and man, what a pain in the butt it is to try to do that. And then the undersheriff is like, oh, hey, we got a program that helps facilitate getting, these licenses through. I mean, to me, I can almost picture this conversation on the books not being illegal or criminal or nefarious in any way whatsoever, but behind closed doors, these people knew what they were doing. You know what I mean? It seems a little bit of both, all wrapped up into one.
Yeah, regardless of the intent of it, the perceived situation is something. The optics of it were maybe not considered, so they should have hired Olivia Pope to handle it, and they didn't. Too bad. This is a big one, and it's one that I want to have us properly covered to the best of our ability, given the conversations taken place on whether or not the Washington Post article about this is perfectly accurate. So there was a Washington Post article recently published, it was November 20th, by Reed Albergati. And the headline is, Apple is lobbying against a bill aimed at stopping forced labor in China. And perhaps more important is the subhead, which says, Apple wants to water down key provisions of the bill, which would hold U.S. companies accountable for using Uyghur forced labor, according to 2 congressional staffers. While that is the headline from the Washington Post that is currently kind of making the rounds, there was an article from, let me find it here. Maybe if anybody else has heard of that or has seen this article. Oh, here we go, from Axios. And this is from the China reporter from Axios, who says, according to sources I have spoken to with knowledge of the matter, this Washington Post story, the one that I just talked about, does not accurately characterize Apple's position on the Uyghur Forced Labor Prevention Act. It is not accurate to say that Apple's aim is to water down key provisions of the bill, and it is not accurate to characterize Apple as lobbying against the bill. And no, the sources I am citing are not a strident email from Apple's PR department. Now, there's no more information other than that. And I am.
There was
not
one other
giving...
one. I don't forget on the article. I forget who put it out, but there was an article that said that the way that it was being applied was, like for example, if the third person that you hired, like company down the stretch, did something, you couldn't just fire that company, but you had to do something. It was just there was a problem with they had an issue with the implementation, not the spirit, I think, of the legislation. But I forget where that was.
Well, it's difficult because the legislation itself acknowledges that part of the problem is that supply chains are really vague. It's not as though there is one supplier or one organization that is employing Muslims in what's called the Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region, colloquially. It's that you could basically have a company that's providing, I don't know, let's say 10,000 set of hands, and of those they are using 10,000. 10% of that labor is actually from one of these camps. So that's why it becomes very, very difficult for a company to really establish that, to make even a good-hearted company to establish that, no, we know for a fact that there is not forced labor being used in the production of our technology and our products. The bigger problem though is that there's already laws on the books that allows customs to refuse to allow into the country products that are made with forced labor. The government has decided, the people who are putting together this legislation have decided that the situation in China with 1.8 million Muslims being, it's not like what we imagine prison labor to be like in the United States. They are moving Muslims into a special camp and basically turning it into a manufacturing zone where the factories are next door to the labor camp, and the population of this camp exists to provide really cheap labor for anybody who wants to subcontract it. So for that reason, they believe that this particular human rights abuse requires its own specific investigation, its own specific set of rules, and the big deal here is that not only are these companies going to be responsible, but also they will have to report to the Securities and Exchange Commission as part of their reports. Do they know of any forced labor being used to manufacture their products? The other problem here, the other thing that I think would catch a company's eye is that the legislation itself doesn't specify what kind of responsibilities and penalties a company is going to incur. They get the law says that the proposed law says that Once this law goes into effect, the president and the government has 120 days to decide what actions are appropriate, what sort of investigations are appropriate, and a company basically has to be ready for whatever happens after that. I think this is important legislation, and I think that Axios and others are very, very wise it's very, very smart to point out that just because you have a lobbyist working on a certain piece of legislation, a lot of it is just simply they want to know what's being discussed so that they can be ready for it, or they at least want to have some sort of influence over. They want to have certain ears, access to certain ears in this issue. It doesn't necessarily mean they want to water this down or that they are opposed. They're opposed to limitations on use of forced labor. So it seems like a good law. Its intentions are good. It's very, very necessary because this problem has only been getting worse and worse as our awareness has expanded over the depth of this program. But I wouldn't necessarily fault Apple at this point for having lobbyists who are at least aware of this issue and have it on their radar.
This is very typical of the way, bills and laws and regulations get enacted in the United States. There's going to be certain things that a company is going to be totally against it, and it seems on the surface like a good idea, until you find out that what they're saying is this is an ineffectual bill. If this goes into effect, then the real true change will not be able to happen because it's not within this bill. And again, I have no idea, especially because the Washington Post's article itself doesn't say what Apple was against in the bill itself. It could very easily be, which again is very typical of laws going into places, that there's going to be people who are completely for it because it's easy for them as a company to just oh, this is really vague and I can get away with a lot if we use this bill. And then other companies are against it because they're like, wait a minute, this isn't really protecting anyone. Why are we even doing this? There needs to be a better law than this. So it could be either. It could be Apple, wanting to have the law make it easier for them to get away with something, which I doubt. Why would a company like Apple, who is constantly being very transparent with their reporting on labor overseas, every year they put out their report on that kind of stuff. So why would they want to participate in sort of hiding whether or not they were using forced labor? Or is it more that Apple sees this as a real Band-Aid solution and they think that there's a better solution out there, and there's somebody that is lobbying for this that Apple is on their side of, which I think makes more sense, that Apple might be aligning itself with a team of people who think that there should be just a completely different version of this law, and they're going along that path instead of going along the path of the current law as it's being presented.
Yeah, I'm a little too cynical to believe that Apple wants to make sure the law is strong enough and does its job. I think Apple, unlike a lot of other companies, they've demonstrated their trustworthiness, their belief that they don't want to be associated with forced labor. They don't even want to be associated with subcontractors that treat their hired voluntary labor poorly. So I do have a lot of faith in Apple there. I believe that if they're lobbying about this bill, it's at minimum they want to be in the room where it happens, so to speak. So not necessarily they want to make sure that this law is molded into a shape that is best for Apple, but they definitely want to be in the room where it happens. It's kind of similar to how you hear all of these and all the testimony that Facebook and Google and Apple are having about privacy. Like Facebook, for instance, they always say, "Oh, well, this is why we believe in privacy and security, and this is why we urge Congress to form a federal law about user privacy and security." And that's good, but what they really want is they don't want to have to deal with 50 different state legislatures creating 50 different sets of laws. They would much rather lobby one legislature in D.C. where they can have more influence, and also where it'll be easier for them to comply.
Any last thoughts on this topic before we head on to talk about iPhone and iOS?
I have one, and I know it's tough because politics is always dangerous, in both the best and worst senses of the word. And companies, I don't know how to say this properly. You know, we both do and don't want companies getting involved in our politics, but I think there are cases, you know, where Apple has stood up and said we believe in certain things, and these are deleterious to those beliefs. And they have consistently also said that they believe that engaging is the only way to affect change, that if you leave a place, you no longer have a voice in that place. And I always worry that being sort of, I always worry that there's a danger between being active and being complicit. You know, that's a very, very fine line sometimes to walk. I would just like to see Apple litigate these issues universally, globally, the way they've been litigating civil rights and civil liberties in the US. And I realize, you know, it's easy for me to say this because I don't have the responsibility of a giant company on my hands. And the US, for all of its idiosyncrasies, especially in 2020, is still a far easier place to do these sorts of things than many other countries, including China. But if there is some merit in might for right, I would love to see Apple be more aggressive about pushing against any sorts of violations of civil liberties and civil rights wherever they come across them.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And most civil rights groups that I've read about, when it comes to things like, for instance, censorship, government censorship of the internet in other countries, they say that it's more helpful for a company like Apple to be present in China and be able to influence, or basically to be an in-country advocate for the user than for them to pull out and leave these users without any ally whatsoever. This is kind of a different situation because Apple is just one company. It's hard. This is one of the rare occasions where we call Apple just one company, but they're not detaining nearly 2 million innocent people and creating it as a factory town because they just want to make iPhone components. So long as people like us want to buy a 3-pack of T-shirts for $8, there's always going to be an incentive for China to have forced labor camps. So this is definitely something that we have a responsibility to keep an eye on and to support. Sometimes by making sure we know, like fast fashion is one of the biggest problems with international labor on every single level, whether it's forced labor or abused labor. And we just have to become much more responsible international citizens, even if it does mean
even in North America
$30. You know, exactly. Yes.
Yeah, honestly, particularly here. Okay, well, let us take another quick break before we come back with more news. I do want to tell you about LastPass, who is bringing you this episode of MacBreak Weekly. Thank you, LastPass. Of course, we know you can't trust your most valuable data with just any company. And that is why LastPass has been our choice for identity and access management. But listen, Twit isn't the only one. LastPass has been named a leader in the G2 Fall Grid Reports, a leading peer-to-peer review site that provides unbiased user reviews on leading software solutions. Of the 746 customers that have left user reviews, 93% of LastPass users rated them 4 or 5 stars. So what is it that makes LastPass so unique and vital for your business? Well, IT and security leaders can take back control of password security. You're going to have control from a central dashboard. Businesses can customize admin privileges, ensuring that any given admin has only the right level of access. No matter your organization's source of truth, LastPass integrates to onboard users, sync groups, and revoke access. Plus, LastPass allows actionable insight for admins. You get security scores, so you can see real-time readouts of your business's password hygiene and track improvements over time. You can review audit reports, so build compliance and maintain accountability with detailed reporting logs that tie actions to individuals. And for every employee, you can view their password scores, gain access to shared accounts, monitor group memberships, and more. Also, your company can enable and require MFA, multi-factor authentication. Make logging into different sites simple and easy while still being secure. The built-in password generator creates long, randomized passwords that protect against hacking. Employees can easily and securely share passwords, notes, and other sensitive information through LastPass. Leverage more than 100 policies and advanced security features, or just use their out-of-the-box configurations for a balance between security and convenience. Folks, LastPass has won 8 awards so far this year. They're PC Mag's Editor's Choice. They won the Fortress Cybersecurity Award, and they are Business Insider's Best Overall Password Manager, just to name a few. Let the award-winning LastPass help you take back control of password security. Go to lastpass.com/twit. That's lastpass.com/twit. And LastPass, you got to get a big old thank you from us because you have played a huge role in keeping us rolling along this year. So thank you, LastPass, for your support of this show and all of Twit. All righty. Let's talk about the latest version of iOS. This is kind of a quick little bit here. Updating to iOS 14.2.1. If you have a new iPhone 12, then this is an update for you. And in fact,
yes.
This is just for the new iPhones 12, right, Lori?
Yes, and this happened to me. So this is a really big deal.
Totally
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah. I have an experience that I can talk about.
Please do.
Yeah. So for some unknown reason, iPhone 12 users were experiencing this really weird thing where group messages, there's been a couple of different versions of this problem, but the biggest, most broadly recognized problem is it's group messages that include an Android device in the group message, where the person with the Android device, you don't receive their messages. This happened to me. It was very frustrating. We had to switch over to Discord because the person that was in this group, that she would be talking to us and I would say, like, I'm not getting these messages. So this has finally been fixed. So for anybody who was wondering what was going on, or if they, experience like their friends are like, Heather was saying something and you didn't respond, what's up? It's because
did you think she hated you, Lori?
Did
you think that she was really upset with you?
Yeah, exactly.
What did I do?
Yeah, so it's been fixed, and you can tell whoever that friend is that's like, what happened? Why weren't you responding to me in our group message? You could be like, oh, it was my iPhone 12's fault, and now it's fixed.
Yes. So obviously, if you haven't updated, you absolutely should. Another thing, if you are a person who uses screen protectors, there is potentially a little bit of an issue with responsiveness of the screen. If you've got a screen protector, I know my brother, for example, he always has those. Oh, do you have another
this, not me personally, but one of my coworkers, Karen Freeman, actually had this exact problem happen to her. It was with a case with a screen protector. It was unresponsive. She took the case off and it was totally responsive. It's a very weird, a very isolated problem. And with the update, she said it has been fixed. So there you go.
Wow. Good. That's
I
good.
know. These are these very weird, specific problems with iPhone 12. And the screen protector screen response thing is, to me, even weirder because it seems like a hardware-related thing. But they were able to fix it in a software update. Yeah,
I believe it's that responsiveness bug is just for the Mini. Is that what Karen has? Yep. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So she's a fellow Miniite.
Yes, she is. Yes.
So definitely make sure to get that update. But another thing that we can potentially celebrate for those of you whose home screens are aesthetic AF, you will be happy to hear that in the developer beta, iOS 14.3 beta 2, things are changing, folks, where right now, any of you who have, a baby blue home screen with, teal buttons, when you go to launch the app with your custom icons, it launches shortcuts, which then launches the app that you're trying to get to. That's annoying, right? Well, in iOS 14.3 beta 2, you can look forward to, hopefully, we have to hope that this feature ends up getting shipped. It essentially lets those shortcuts run in place. What does that mean? It means that when you tap the app, instead of launching the shortcuts app in between, it just goes ahead and goes to whatever app you're going to.
That's fantastic.
Right. That's fantastic for the huge group of users out there, everyday user. I keep talking about my brother because he is a big fan of Apple products in general, and he kind of will message me every once in a while to talk about them. And so he got the new iPhone, and he was showing me his home screen. He's got an aesthetic AF home screen, and so he was kind of lamenting this. And I said, look forward to maybe this will change. We hope. So I know he's pumped about this. But even aside from the people who are just making the change for the sake of the visual representation, folks like Rosemary Orchard, who was on this morning's iOS Today episode, is excited about this. And folks like my co-host on Smart Tech Today, Matthew Casanelli, is excited about this because of its automation ability, where I can basically create a home screen button that triggers a scene in my house. So I could, turn off or on the lights or do different things like that without having to have it launch an app and do this and do that. So this is just, this is big because it opens up a whole new world. I know I keep making that Disney reference. Thank you. I appreciate that. Andy, as an Android user, Android user with an aesthetic AF home screen. Now, I'm curious, is that part of it? Is that that ability to kind of set up icons on your home screen that can do something other than launch apps? So I'm not talking about widgets, but just an icon that when I tap it, it does something other than launch an app. Is that a possibility on Android?
Yeah, it's awesome. You have not only does stock Android have these sort of abilities, but also if you don't like this launcher, you can install a different launcher entirely. So really what happens when you wake up, your Android phone can be whatever it is that you want to happen at that point. So it was really there are a lot of unkind Android users that when the latest version of iOS came out and people were like, and iPhone users were like saying, "Oh my God, it's so great to have like these things on my launch screen, my home screen." And there's the usual, "Oh man, welcome to 2008. We've had that ever since the blah blah blah." And no, we're all happy. I'm always thrilled when Android steals a great idea, or excuse me, Android gets a great user experience that first appeared on iOS. I'm just as thrilled when iOS gets a great experience that started off on Android, because you can't really design stuff in a vacuum, can you? Like if you're designing system software, you have to see you really have to see how you have to build the thing and then let millions of people use it and see how they interact with it. And I think that Apple did great by I'm going to use the word dogma again, that not dogmatically thinking that no on iOS we're better than that. We don't put dinguses on the home screen is just for application icons only in folders. It's like, no, actually that works great. I wish I had that on my phone. Hey, wait a minute, I'm an Apple paid engineer. I can actually make that happen on the home screen. So yeah, this is all great. And I'll just wind up by saying that if there's only been one serious weakness that has remained in iOS, and that is the relative lack of power of the launcher of Springboard. I've always wanted the ability to even just do simple things like I need to have 80 apps installed. I only need to have about a dozen of them actually on the home screen. Please let the home screen be a place where I choose to put icons, as opposed to a place where every single app that I install lands. So work to go, but it's a great development.
The fact that making your home screen aesthetic AF it was so hugely popular when iOS 14 first dropped it's clearly evidence that though iPhone users are we're settled into whatever Apple gives us, but as soon as Apple gives us a little bit of customization ability, we just eat that up. So I love that Apple is finally working toward that direction of giving us a little bit more customization in our home screen. And I think this is just going to keep going and keep growing, because we do want to be able to play with our devices a little bit more and make them a little more personal, for sure. And to speak to what you're saying, Micah, about opening up a whole new world for automations on your home screen, that's huge. When you described being able to tap a button to set a scene in your house, I have, every Christmas I set up all my Christmas lights and they're all plugged into smart plugs. And I have a scene, but I have to open I set an automation, so I don't actually have to turn it on at all. But if I wanted to turn it on, I'd have to open an app. I'd have to find the scene. If I could just have a button on my home screen that was like Christmas time, that would be so great. And I really look forward to that. I think Shortcuts it's really helped the iPhone become a real flexible and variety-driven device that we can use to make all kinds of things happen for ourselves. I wish more people were like comfortable with using Shortcuts, because there's so much out there, so many different cool things that we can do with it.
Yeah. I mean, this is a celebration, in my opinion, going off of what Andy said, on everybody's devices getting to have this customization. That's, every time because I keep a Google Pixel 4 around and use it. I try to use it as regularly as possible. I've got a Mint SIM in it, sponsor, and it is the customization ability and some of the things that I can do. What's especially interesting to me is that there are times where I can't get an app to do a thing that I needed to do, specifically to smart home stuff. And it feels like maybe it's due to some of the very locked in nature of the way that iOS can be and with its apps. And so I'm like, you know what, I'm going to try this on my Android device and see if there's maybe a little bit easier way for it to make the connection or do what it needs to do. And oftentimes that ends up helping me get whatever I need to get done. But one of the things that I have loved and celebrated about the Pixel and that screen, or that user feature, is that you really do feel like you are making this device your own, and that you can make it exactly how you want it. And with iOS devices, a lot of times it feels like you are more prone to wanting to add stickers or special cases or things like that, because the operating system itself doesn't offer enough individuality, enough personalization. And so your iPhone feels a lot like, the next person's iPhone. And I really think that drove this huge kind of, what is the word I'm looking for? This meme almost at this level that folks are just like, yes, I can take this device that, yes, when you look at it from the back, this is, everybody's iPhone 12 Pro Max. But when you look at it from the front, and when I'm on it, when I'm doing all the things that I'm doing, and this does not apply to me because I'm not aesthetic AF home screen person, but
yes.
That they can, that they can customize it and make it their own.
Can we get all three of you to sing us just a big Whole New World song just for all of us? Could that be the commercial?
That should be the commercial. Exactly. It's awesome. And I celebrate it. And I celebrate the individuality and the uniqueness and the ideas that folks are coming up with. And now I'm curious, Lori and Renee, have you experimented at all, even if you don't currently have an aesthetic AF home screen, have you experimented at all with these opportunities to adjust the style of your home screen?
I have not done it, and it's mainly because I know about the pain point of having to open up through Shortcuts into the app. So I will in iOS 14.3, but right now I just have like the widgets that you can add to your home screen because through Apple's thing, not by customizing it specifically, which that alone has been absolutely fantastic. I love widgets on the home screen. I don't even have apps on I have one home screen page that has my literally constantly open all the time, most used apps. And then everything else is a widget. And then it's all of the other apps are relegated to the app library. And I do have a hidden home screen that I have. It's for when I take pictures of my iPhone, I want the screen to have certain apps on them so that it has that good aesthetic for it. So, I mean, that's such great customizations, and to further that along and have a home screen that has a complete, design aesthetic. I'm going to do it for sure once iOS 13 comes out, 14.3 comes out, because that's been the one thing that made me not try it, is that I didn't want to have to worry about having to launch through shortcuts first.
Yeah, that's what's
similar to Lori.
Go ahead. I'm sorry, Renee. Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say I'm similar to Lori in that I didn't do it because it looked like a lot of work. But if I'm being super honest, I'm not going to do it even after it's not a lot, like it doesn't trip through shortcuts anymore, only because I spent what feels like lifetimes arrow Wagnering my Trios and Windows mobile devices, like hours upon hours, week after week. I themed them to look like other devices, to look like movies, to look like everything. It was just an incredibly enjoyable pastime that I know right now would come at the expense of sleep. And I've kind of cut that sleep budget to the barest minimum. And it got to the point, like for years, people would jokingly call me Captain Default because I didn't even rearrange the icons on my phone, because just switching between phones and reinstalling, it would get reset anyway. So it just felt like learned helplessness. Like why spend 18 hours making the perfect home screen when the next app update will just set it back to system default? And I have not got over that trauma, that sort of learned helplessness yet. So, I mean, if it persists and it gets even simpler, and maybe with iOS 15, you'll actually be able to save and sync your layouts to iCloud. I mean, wouldn't that be wonderful, where you could just propagate these things and never worry about losing them again? I would dip my toe back into those waters, but it just feels like such a time commitment right now in my mind. I want my device working for me. I don't have time to work for it.
I don't blame you. That is, in fact, part of the reason why I have not done this thing. It's time commitment that I'm always installing new apps. I'm always installing new betas. I'm always installing new stuff. And so I just the thought of having to spend the time to organize and make those adjustments. I mean, I was the person who I just had folders labeled A through Z, and then AA, AB, AC that just had apps in them, because I had so many apps and I didn't want, basically you'd tap on an app and I don't want to go to a second page on that. But that's where I stored my apps before. There was no categorization because I just use Spotlight to launch my apps. So now with App Library, I have all of those pages with A through Z and then AA, AB, etc. just hidden. I don't use them because I don't need to. Mm-hmm. And so
do your test flight apps show up? My test flight apps don't show up in search and Spotlight anymore, and it drives me nuts because I can't get to them.
That's a good question. I haven't tried that. Because my test flight apps are mostly on my home screen, and my home screen does have actual apps there. So I've not had that issue. They're all muscle memoried for me. But yeah, I don't know. It could be something that's an issue. Let's talk a little bit about Apple, about the iPhone 12 Pro. Of course, this phone has been out for a little while now, but Halide, maker of an incredible app, and one that anybody who wants to take advantage of the new and incredible features of your iPhone should get. Sebastiaan DeWitt has put together a blog post kind of talking about all the features. It's a review. It's a camera review of the iPhone 12 Pro Max. And I don't know if anyone has had a chance to check out this article, but it is a really neat piece talking about all the advantages.
There's two things that struck me with this. One is, just before this, we saw some disparity in reviewers where like MKBHD and Peter McKinnon and a couple others said, I don't get it. I don't see any difference between the iPhone 12 Pro Max and the regular iPhone 12. And then people like Matthew Panzarino and Austin Mann were like, are you kidding me? Look at this difference. And it turned out that, Marquez and Peter were shooting pictures of their computers and stationary Lamborghinis, as Peter McKinnon does. And Panzarino was shooting pictures of his toddler in motion. And Austin Mann was shooting his dog. And it turned out like when you were moving your hands and the subject was moving, that extra capabilities in the camera really shone through. But what struck me about Sebastiaan's article was that it looks like, one, the computational photography is so good that it corrects for a lot of the not deficiencies, but it sort of escalates the standard Pro camera to an extent where it does make the differences not as extreme. But also it looks like Apple's treating them the same, because when Sebastiaan showed the raw version of those photos, the differences in clarity, like in lack of noise, were super apparent. So I'm wondering if Apple just hasn't tweaked Smart HDR3 and Deep Fusion yet to really show off what the sensor on that iPhone 12 Pro Max can do. And I'm hoping that will be in a soon update, because then I think you'll actually be able to appreciate the differences more.
Yeah. I love that this is. I think the real trick on modern phones and turning it like a real camera really is just giving the phone apps and your desktop apps access to as much sensor data as possible. That for most people, just pushing some sliders around in the standard Apple Photos app or an Instagram is enough. But it's wonderful when you have access to pseudo raw data, but the data that also includes like depth information. What a very, very smart app like Halide can do. What a very, very smart app like Lightroom Mobile can do with that, plus what Photoshop can do with that on the desktop. It really does turn this pocket phone into a competitor for a mirrorless camera in many instances.
Yeah. And like I said, I know the iPhone 12 Pro Max and 12 Pro have been out for a little while, but I think that, as folks are getting these in their hands and we're getting more real world use of these devices, we're starting to see kind of how these shine. And that's something that I think is incredibly important when it comes to reviews. One of the things that I talked about early on with the iPhone 12 Pro review itself is it's a little bit of a responsibility that I felt I and other reviewers needed to have to be honest and forthright about their feelings about this device and where it fit in the lineup of what iPhones you've had in the past, what iPhones you have now, and which ones made sense to upgrade, which ones did not. Given the fact that essentially at this moment, as we are all living through this pandemic, we are all experiencing at the very least a low level of trauma. That is, a given statement because of the loss of control for many of us and the fear and concern. And I mean, there are a number of things that play a role in that.
The loss of hugs.
Yeah, exactly. The loss of hugs, by golly. And one of the things that our brains attempt to do in order to lessen that trauma, there are kind of two ways that we can go. One is to regain a sense of control in ways that we can. And so you'll see a lot of people buzzing their hair in this time. You'll see a lot of people bleaching their hair, changing their facial hair, all sorts of things as those things that we have control over.
You're about to bring up my tattoo, aren't you?
Yes, and yes, I was just about to get to Andy's cupcake tattoo.
I'm telling you, the Instagram photo. Once that thing heals up, that back piece is gonna make so much more sense. I'm sorry for interrupting, but I'm feeling a little bit attacked right now.
Yes, specifically, people are getting tattoos, but safely, hopefully. And those are some of the ways that we regain control. But then another way that we attempt to handle this low level of trauma, or in some cases higher level of trauma, is to look to distractions. And one of those is people quote laughingly, but is a real thing, retail therapy, looking for those dopamine hits from new things. And so given that people are more susceptible to the new shiny as a way of distracting ourselves from this low level of trauma, I think that it's been important to be very realistic about the what is very good about these iPhones and the reasons why you should upgrade, but also to be fair and be truthful about reasons why you should not upgrade and what phones it makes sense maybe to not upgrade for, or reasons that it makes sense to not upgrade. Yeah, please.
Yeah, one thing that's still, I understand why, because technology, like this kind of technology, is so much newer than the other things in our lives. But there's two things that if I'm going to make it my mission to help evangelize over the next few years, is that just treat your technology like you would anything else. like your refrigerator, your TV set, your car. They make new models of cars, of TV sets, and refrigerators every year, but we're not inundated with reviewers who are demanding we figure out if we need to buy a new TV set or car or refrigerator every year, comparing it only to last year's model, talking about how incremental an update they are from last year's model, or shoving them in our. It's like, yes, there's a 2020 Toyota and a 2021. I'm fine. Yes, there's a new Frigidaire. Mine still makes ice. Yes, there's a new OLED TV. Mine still looks great playing The Mandalorian. And I wish we could get to a point where, okay, Apple's put out a new iPhone. They should put out an iPhone every year because somebody's going to want to buy it. But I'm fine with the one I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years ago. It's okay. You enjoy it.
It's important to go ahead, Lori. I'm sorry. I'll go after you.
Okay. Well, to be the opposing conversation in this piece, while I do agree with you, I really do, you also got to remember that there are dozens of ways that you can finance phones right now that can allow you to upgrade every year or every 2 years. And there's a lot of people on those programs. And you know what? Chase your bliss. If you want to get a new phone every year or every 2 years and you're on the Apple upgrade program, heck yeah. That's what you are, that person.
I'm renting my fridge.
Yeah, you are who Apple loves the most, because Apple wants to put out a new phone every year. And if you want to pay in the Apple upgrade program to get a new phone every year, you can do it. So I just had to throw that in there too.
Mm. No, my one of my big maxims is always that when it comes to contemplating a hardware upgrade, unless it provides a new opportunity or solves an existing problem, it's probably not something that you need to bother yourself with. And one of the metrics that I think is important when people who spend their lives like us, like looking at every single piece of technology that comes out month after month, year after year, is to make sure that we give these recommendations and these observations in the context of the current device that someone already has. Like I did tweet out that I did buy again. Thank you to everybody last week. You did cost me like over $1,500 because I did buy a new MacBook after we talked about the new M1 chips last week. But the thing is, it's a wonderful and after I tweeted about that, people say, "Oh, so you recommend it? Should I buy like a new MacBook right now?" And I have to make it really, really clear that my current MacBook is a 2015. It doesn't have a touch bar. It has a pretty slow-ish processor for 2015. My desktop Mac, which it's going to supplement for at least the next year, is a 2012 a 2012 Mac Mini. So for those reasons, yes, it's one hell of a really great upgrade for me. I will see so many things that I can do, I will be able to do once the thing ships that I can't do right now or can't do very, very comfortably right now. However, if you bought a MacBook 2 years ago, maybe you're going to see a big enhancement. Maybe you're going to see a big fast forward in what you can do with it. Maybe not. With phones, it becomes even more tricky because you start off with a basic platform that is great no matter how much you spend on this, whether you spend $350 or $1,100. Until you get into the idea of folding screens, I wouldn't go so far as to say is they're all the same. But in terms of what most people want a phone to do, which is to deal with all their mobile apps, deal with mobile communications, and also take really, really good pictures, they've all got all those bases covered. And so maybe if you bought an iPhone 5 years ago, a brand new iPhone is going to be one hell of a great upgrade. Yes, wonderful, lovely. It's going to be spiffy. If you bought one last year, unless you have the ability to get one without really paying any money out of pocket for it, it would be really, really hard for me to say, yeah, the camera is definitely a leap forward, but it's more exciting for someone who's on like an iPhone 8 and has been waiting for something really, really big to happen before, who's been waiting for a good excuse to upgrade finally, than someone who wants a slightly better camera than they had last year. $1,000 is a lot of money to spend to replace a phone that is really, really very, very good, only a year old, particularly if you don't have like a spouse or a child you can palm your old phone off on. So that's always the context that people have to keep in mind. What are you upgrading from? Because that will really influence whether or not this is a great upgrade for you or not.
It's also hilarious to me that, and I talked about this in my review, that computer Twitter or tech Twitter was like, I can't believe these new Max phones cost as much or more than my MacBook Air, while photo Twitter was like, wow, this is the least expensive new camera I bought this year.
Yeah, it's a back and forth there for sure.
It's a different world, Micah.
It's an incredible camera. Let's see. Let's talk about portless rumors, as we do. Just because I find this a fascinating conversation as we, look to the future of MagSafe technology, as we look at what benefits come from going portless and what pain points come from going portless. And Renee, I'd love to hear you talk about what is the negative aspect of a portless future? And if we did go portless, kind of what benefits do we and Apple get out of that change?
Yeah, so it's not just an Apple thing. I think, of course, we're paying attention to the Apple rumors, and where Apple goes, often so goes the industry. So it is a big deal. But, there was a Pixel 2 prototype that was portless, and they just didn't have confidence in remote restore, so we never saw it. And there have been a couple Android vendors. I would call them charitably sort of concept phones, but they have made portless phones. And the idea is that manufacturers always want to get rid of potential points of mechanical failure. And even though these phones are water resistant, there are people who don't understand what that means, and they'll take it in the pool, full of chlorine or salt water, and then plug it in to charge, not realizing that it's not short circuit proof. It's only really waterproof. And so there is a degree of danger and a degree of damage every year associated with this. So for the same reasons they wanted to virtualize the home button, and they don't use mechanical, chutures, what raise and lower the camera up just to get rid of the notch. They still want to completely simplify the design. So I don't know if Apple will be the first. They weren't the first to remove the headphone jack. HTC did that for years before Apple did. But when they move, they'll probably move to it. I think the danger really is that you do give up the simplicity of the cable. The cable is still way more efficient for charging than wireless charging is. And even if we get a smart connector, built into MagSafe, it's not going to have the data rate of even the meager and miserly USB 2.0 that still holds back Lightning from being faster. Never mind USB-C. So there's part of me that wishes Apple would upgrade it. That would make it be USB-C, be super fast USB-C, dispense cold brew from the Lightning from the USB-C port. All of that. It does look like Apple and other manufacturers are going to go this direction, and it will be simpler, but I am not convinced it will be better, at least not without several years of pain in the transition.
Several years of pain. Yeah. Lori, do you want an iPhone without a port on a little mini phone?
No, I don't think it's necessary. I don't understand what all the hubbub is about portless or having ports. It doesn't matter to me. If I can charge my phone, if I can plug it into my computer when need be for, purposes of recovery mode or something like that, and for other people who use it to back up their phones or something like that, if there's a way to do all these things, whatever that phone looks like is what I'm okay with. It doesn't matter. The average everyday user, they don't care whether they're plugging in their phone or not plugging in their phone. So it, to me, is really just, it's not a big deal. And I don't care.
Implementation detail.
Yeah. And I don't care if we never go to it. I don't care if we go to it next year. It's just not really that different to my day-to-day use. I plug my phone in usually when there's about to be a big update once a year to a new operating system. And that's specifically so that I can write how-to guides on how to update your iPhone through iTunes. So for me, I don't need a port. But I also don't care that the port's there. I'm not the kind of person who's gee, I really wish I could take my camera underwater and take pictures of things, because I have good cases. The Catalyst waterproof case is actually a perfect example of a phone case that protects the phone 100%. So, it's I don't know. I don't know what the big deal is.
I would be very, very concerned about a portless phone. Because my attitude has always been, when you take away a port from a phone, it really isn't a user-directed feature. It is a way to save on component costs. It's a way of getting back some of the retail space that you've got inside that phone, which is at a super, super premium. It's a really, really good deal for Apple or the phone manufacturer. It's not the sort of thing they're doing because Apple could not pretend that they're doing this because they want to give the consumer the best phone they can possibly make. This is something you did that was quite selfish. And I'm still a little bit salty over deleting the headphone jack because, I mean, there's, again, you can make the intellectual academic explanation. Oh, but look how cheap Bluetooth headphones are, and look how everybody has Bluetooth headphones. Yeah, but until you get except for the people who don't have Bluetooth headphones or who can't listen to music on a daily commute because they forgot that they left their they can't afford to have a different set of Bluetooth headphones inside every laptop bag, and they forgot that they left their one good pair of Bluetooth headphones earplugs back at home. As far as utility of having a USB-C port, a lot of people, I like the ability of be able to dock my phone and simply slurp all of the photos off of there without having to go through Apple Photos or Google Photos as an intermediary. When you spend $1,000 for a phone, particularly, I should be able to do what I want to do with that phone. All the decisions that could be made should be based on what gives the user the most power to do as much reasonable stuff as they want to do. And that doesn't even touch on the fact that it's great to be able to buy a $20, $10 battery charger, attach a simple cable to it, and have it topped up 100% in little more than an hour. And not only that, being able to start to use that thing in your hand just 2 minutes later. The number of times, especially when I'm traveling, where it's 4 or 5 in the afternoon and I'm down to like red battery status, and I have to call someone or text someone or check a map, and I've managed to plug it into the battery pack just in time to prevent a shutdown, but also while it's still going from like 1% to 2% to 3%, I can make that text message that I want to make. Is a plugless phone that only can charge wirelessly, is it going to give me that kind of satisfaction? And unless it can let me do the most extreme days use out of it, I'm not talking about like just streaming video for 8 or 9 hours. I'm talking about watching video for 8 or 9 hours. I'm talking about give me 2 days of battery life no matter what I do with this damn phone, with all CPU cores lit at the same time, taking 4K video, everything, then I will consider that it's not a big trade-off to be limited to wireless charging. So this is what gets me kind of worried, that they keep chipping away. It's no one's going to switch to a different kind of phone because Apple deleted or any other manufacturer deleted the headphone jack. But it's death by 1,000 cuts, where suddenly you have this phone in your hand that you spend you're being asked to spend $1,000 for, that you're like, oh, but I won't be able to do this with it, and oh well, doesn't really work for me for doing that. And I have these really nice wired headphones I like. I'm going to have to buy a DAC. That's another thing. How do I plug in a DAC on a phone with no port? You'll have a lot of people who will saying that Bluetooth is not good enough quality to drive my $800 headphones. It's the death by 1,000 cuts. I really think that every single time they make a change to a piece of hardware, particularly a really expensive one, it should be unequivocal. This is nothing but upside for the user. This is not something that we just don't want to bother with it, and we're going to pretend that just because we think that more people use wireless whatever than non-wireless, we can force this change and it'll all work out okay. I think that's a level of arrogance that I don't like to see in any manufacturer.
All right. I am realizing that we are starting to run out of time, but I did want to mention there is a new site called IsAppleSiliconReady.com. And this is a pretty awesome site that has apps listed as having native M1 support, Rosetta 2 support, and apps that aren't currently working. Let me pull this up so that I can show everybody what the site looks like here. And so you can go on and see what apps are currently available and which ones are not. I think this is so much fun because one of the things that's been really fun for me is going into the App Store every couple of days, say, and adding, just want to be on the screen a little bit here, is going into the App Store on my Mac every couple of days and going into my purchased tab and seeing what new apps have shown up as something that I can download on my Mac. And this is with an Intel Mac, which you might be able to hear the fans spinning right now. But of course, there are the apps that also work as having native M1 support as well. And so if you have a favorite app that you're looking for, you can check this list to see what is available, what will soon have support if it doesn't currently have support, and some due dates on when those are supposed to be coming. So yeah, this is kind of fun. And you can, of course, request to have certain apps added if they're not currently on the list. And I guess this is an opportunity to reach out to the developers and say, hey, I'd really like to have Apple Silicon support. But I don't know, don't be too mean. There's a lot going on right now.
We know. Stop asking us. We're working on it. Yeah.
Yeah. And what a valuable resource for people who truly rely on some of these services or apps and programs for their day-to-day life. And when you're sitting here trying to make that decision about whether or not you should upgrade and get a Mac with an M1, on the one hand, eventually all of these Macs are going to move over. It's not like you will never get to use a Mac with M1, so you might as well get an Intel Mac. That's just not going to happen. But if you're trying to decide whether or not to buy now, you can look at this list and find out, should I hold off or should I buy now? And also, if you're somebody who absolutely desperately needs a new Mac right now, you can't wait any longer, and you do use one of these programs that literally won't even work with Rosetta 2, there's how you make your decision. I think this is a really valuable resource, and I like that they've already got this list started. I can't wait to see it grow because I think it's a really great idea, really helpful for users that are trying to make those decisions right now about whether or not they should buy. It's great. I love it.
What I prefer to do is look at Twitter for people who want to snark about Apple selected reviewers, even though they're the same reviewers who selected by Google, Samsung, and every other company to review the exact same thing, and then base it only on their attempts to install 1960s DOS applications, and I want to make all my purchasing decisions.
But on the other hand, we all have these individual apps that we use all the time. Like for me, I had good news and bad news. The good news being that like a lot of what I use, like I need like a the more powerful machine for is that yes, I buy like I say, I buy movies on DVD. This is like my latest eBay haul of Mystery Science 3000 DVDs. I rip them on my DVD drive with an app called Make MKV, and then I convert them to something a little bit more compact using Handbrake. So the good news was that Handbrake is like fully full binary, so I will get like this amazing. Because it's such a huge like math intensive thing. I will be able to get that kind of performance when I do that conversion. Make MKV isn't on this list. I'm going to like click the button and request it. But I was on the forums for the app yesterday, saying that people who have been trying to install it get just a flat out. We cannot install it. We cannot allow this app to be installed on this Mac at this time. It's just like a flat out. Not I'll run it like in Rosetta, but I will not even allow this app to be installed in the first place. And we're requesting screenshots to see exactly what's happening. But that's a bummer for me. That's also the reason why I will definitely be holding on to my old Macs for a good amount of time. So it's a bummer if you've got that one app that really makes your life a very positive and enlightened thing, or something one thing that your company makes you use that you're going to have to keep an eye on.
A non-bummer for me.
Like
Go ahead, Renee.
No, I was going to say for me, it's like still these Electron apps, they run, but they consume way more power, performance, and battery than Final Cut rendering 10-bit XF AVC footage. It's like, so like I keep telling people there's no magic in M1. Yes, it's incredibly optimized. It does great things, but your RAM is still your RAM. Mac OS is still Mac OS, and your apps are still your apps. And your experience will vary widely based on like what you experienced on Intel. You'll get maybe a little more on M1 just because of some of the optimizations. But if you're still running all Electron apps, you're still running all Electron apps, with whatever RAM you have.
Can you hear the 3 Electron apps I'm running? Because I certainly can on this Intel Mac. It's like I said, every couple of days is Christmas for me. And in fact, I just opened up the App Store to see, and what should appear but one of my favorite apps on iOS. It's called Music Harbor. And if you are a music listener and you have artists that you really like, Music Harbor lets you know. You follow artists that you like, and it lets you know when new music is available from those artists, and it even has upcoming music. And so it will pop open. It can give you notifications if you want them, but you can also just see the latest albums from this artist, and then you can easily add it to your Apple Music library from the app. And this was originally just on iOS, but now they kept that button checked, or checked that button that says make it available on macOS as well. And so I'm very happy to have this app here on the Mac, because this is one of my favorite apps, and it's how I know right when a new artist, or right when an artist that I love has released new music, and is the way that I keep up to date with that. So yeah, it's been fun just every couple of days launching the App Store on my Mac, going to on the left-hand side, clicking on my name, and then seeing all the apps that are purchased by me, and just finding the ones that are new that have the little iCloud icon download next to it. And it's like, oh, that was originally just available on iOS, but they made a macOS version available as well. Yay. Darkroom was a recent convert to the Mac, and that's a very popular iOS app for editing photos. And so, yeah, this has been a lot of fun.
I really want Instacart to make their iOS app available on M1 chip Macs, because I hate grocery shopping on my phone. Yeah. I want to do it on my computer. So I checked, and it's not. So I think they must have they actually checked that box that says, please do not make this an iOS app. And I was like, oh, that's a bummer.
Right. Because in Safari, I get the little notification all the time. This app is this page is using significant performance, and it's sluggish. And so then what I end up doing inevitably is launching my phone or my iPad and going to the app. So yes, I'm with you. I would love to have Instacart on the Mac. All right. You and I both are going to pressure them.
You could just be grocery shopping while you're working, just pop that little app up, and I'm writing an article, but I'm also grabbing all the things that I need to get delivered today. That would be so much easier to do. So
oh yes. All right, I'm adding that. We got to add that to the list. All right. Oh, and folks, a little bit of good news before we get into our picks of the week. There was a little bit of upsettedness about what was once certainly a tradition for my family around Thanksgiving, which is a holiday we celebrate in the United States at the last Thursday of November. And then for those of us who celebrate Christmas, December 25th, around those holidays, tuning into PBS and watching a Charlie Brown Thanksgiving and a Charlie Brown Christmas. And these used to be broadcast on PBS as a way to enjoy those shows for free. So as long as you had a method of watching and also a way to get the broadcast signal, you could tune into your local PBS station and watch those two specials. Apple announced that it had, gained the rights for these two specials and would be streaming them on Apple TV Plus, and then later on Apple TV as a free way to tune into it. But at that point, there was still kind of, I don't know if it was just a a bit of nostalgia playing a role, or if, I mean, there's certainly an argument to be made that it is kind of a bummer that it wasn't available in the ways that it once was. And so Apple has announced, actually Apple and PBS have both announced that not only are the specials either going to or already were available to watch on Apple TV Plus at first and then Apple TV app later, but also would be broadcast on PBS. So A Charlie Brown Thanksgiving was broadcast ad-free on PBS yesterday. I believe it was, as of today's recording. And A Charlie Brown Christmas will be broadcast on PBS later in December. It'll be available on Apple TV Plus first, both of the specials, and then later just on the Apple TV app for a longer period of time. So basically, if you've got a way to watch television in some way, you will be able to tune in to see these specials.
That was a big deal because if one of the things that coronavirus has taught us is that we assume that everybody has access to broadband, and even in this country, no. You have enough pictures of kids doing their schoolwork sitting against a wall outside of a McDonald's use their free Wi-Fi. Mm-hmm. So the taking away something that's that much of our cultural identity from free broadcast television was not a good look for Apple. So yeah, they're broadcast on first they were broadcast on CBS, then ABC got it until last year, and now PBS has it for one night. So if you missed it, if you have broadband, you don't even have to have you don't have to have an account on Apple Plus because that particular special is going to be available for free to anybody who connects to Apple TV Plus from the 25th through the 27th, and to paid subscribers pretty much whenever you want. And I think that you can even access it through the web viewer.
Yep. TV.apple.com.
Exactly. So you don't even necessarily have to have the app installed on something. So that's good move for Apple. You do not mess with our Charlie Brown specials. You just don't.
You don't do it.
Not a good look.
Not a good look. And then last but not least, I wanted to mention a pretty cool thing I just saw this morning. Apple has a new Today at Apple collection called Make Your Holiday, and they have released a project book that you can download from the site, so apple.com/today. And so from November 19th through December 31st, it says create one-of-a-kind gifts using iPhone and iPad. So you download the project book and you can follow through to do some of those projects that are in it. And then you can also tune in live to the virtual sessions that will be happening weekly to go along with it. So I downloaded it this morning, and it's got beautiful graphics. And then there's stuff like festive family portraits, gratitude grams, and that looks like it's making cards essentially. And so yeah, you can learn how to take festive family portraits and draw gratitude grams. So very cool little thing. And I like how Apple has continued these Today at Apple sessions in a different way, and then making use of the technology that it puts out there. It's over time, what is it? iTunes, what is it? iTunes Education? I can't think of now what it was called, but the service where you could get education content. And
wasn't it just iTunes University?
iTunes University, thank you.
Yeah,
bing, bing, bing.
Yeah.
That's been rolling back over time, and then iBooks Author is in Pages now. You do the editing in Pages, and so to see them sort of publish this workbook in Pages was nice. It's just like, okay, yeah, they're doing it themselves, and I got. Even aside from just looking at this and being excited about potentially making some of the things, looking at how they set up these pages was really cool too, from a sort of app interest standpoint of what you can do using Pages. So yeah, you can check that out, apple.com/today. All right. It is finally time for our picks. And I think we'll start. This is because I love this thing so much. I've had one for a while, and it is the absolute best. We're going to start with Andy's pick. Tell us all about your very awesome pick.
Yeah, so yeah, like I said, I did crack and buy an M1 MacBook, and there's my reasons for buying it are very, very specific to me. It's that I do have a really old MacBook and a really old Mac Mini. The things that I can't do very, very well on them are like 4K video, can't do very well. Photoshop is now starting to be really, really slow on it. So I'm prefacing this by saying that the role that this M1 MacBook is going to fulfill for me is to serve as a serious upgrade to my desktop for like the next 6 months to a year, until the time when a really, really good desktop Mac, because I need a machine that's powerful, just powerful enough so that when I'm traveling, I can stream and I can podcast from it. But I need a super, super powerful desktop. This is going to fulfill the role of the much more powerful desktop until I buy the actual M1 Mac Mini with the Apple Silicon Mac Mini with the 18 kajillion microprocessors, generation 3, whatever. But the problem is that, of course, it only has like those 2 Thunderbolt ports, and also the M1 CPU has its own like internal limitations on like how many channels of data it can actually drive. So if I'm going to use it as a desktop, I'm going to need a Thunderbolt hub, and so I bought the TS3 Plus from CalDigit, which is it seems like exactly the bee's knees. Number one, it's also certified by Apple, so you know it's going to work fine. But it has all the ports I want: high speed USB, high speed Thunderbolt, display port. It's got my wired Ethernet plugged in. It's got a card slot. It's compact. You can set it up vertically or horizontally. It's not the only one like this, but having looked at the 2 or 3 that are of the type of power that I want, where I really want to just add all of the ports that I would have gotten for free if this were a laptop from 15 years ago. I really want to have that kind of utility, and also the ability to, whenever I leave the house, assuming that in the future I'll be able to leave the house, I just unplug one Thunderbolt cord, and suddenly I'm free from my external monitor, my external hard drives, and everything. So it's not cheap. Its list price is $250. It's now actually, if you go to CalDigit.com, it's on sale for $220 as a Black Friday sort of thing. Amazon price, I think they're matching that for $220. That's where I bought it from. And you might be asking, well, geez, how come? Why didn't you buy this? They're ones that are cost like $40, $50, $60, $80. They're fine. They're more of the case. They're more of the use where you want to plug in a couple of USB things. As opposed to you want to be able to use a very, very you want to exploit the super, super high speed, dozens of gigabits per second Thunderbolt ports to its full potential. You really have to spend $200 to $300 for a box like this. So hasn't arrived yet, but I've talked to enough people who own it and use it to know that this is, of the 2 or 3 that I was able to even find that do the sort of things I wanted to do, this is definitely going to be the ones that makes me happy.
You are going to love it. I think it's you. For the longest time, we've had that promise of like one cord goes to my Mac and I can plug everything into it and it just does what it's supposed to do. And this actually does that, which is all I've ever wanted. So I'm happy with that. Let us hear from Lori. Lori, what is your pick?
Okay, so I am always on the hunt for a good werewolf movie because most werewolf movies are terrible. So I always watch them whenever they come out, and they're almost always terrible. I just watched The Wolf of Snow Hollow over the weekend, and it just delighted me. So I can't say a lot without giving it away, but it's not just a werewolf movie. It has this dueling story that it tells where, yes, there's a detective kind of situation happening. They're trying to find the killer. A lot of people think that it's a werewolf and things like that. Is there such thing as werewolves? Is it not? Is there no such thing as werewolves? But at the same time, it's also playing out this story of this man who's struggling with alcoholism. It's light, but not lighthearted. It's not quite a comedy, but it's kind of has that like dark comedy kind of nature to it. It is just incredible. It's written and directed and stars Jim Cummings, not the Winnie the Pooh Jim Cummings, but another person, Jim Cummings, who this is, I believe, his first directorial, written, and acting debut in a full-length feature film. I think he's done a lot of shorts, but this is really an astounding, out of the gate kind of movie, and it really does take this werewolf story, which is usually pretty poorly done, and turns it on its head and provides you with a brand new story that is a werewolf story, but also so much more. So I would say for people who worry about scary movies and stuff, this isn't a scary movie. It's not a rah kind of scary movie, but it is incredibly graphic, vulgar. There's a lot of blood and guts kind of stuff. So if you can handle blood and guts kind of stuff, this is a great movie. If blood and guts are a problem for you, stay away from this. It's not going to scare you. It's not going to make you jump out of your seat. It's kind of almost a drama in that way. So I highly recommend it, though.
Awesome. Well, I will have to check that out because my partner and I both like to watch some scary movies, even if it's not, super scary. Renee.
And Micah, for I know this is something that is important to you. No dogs are killed in this movie, so you'll really appreciate that.
Good. Oh boy.
What about wolves?
Wolves.
Well, there are other things that get killed in this movie, but nobody's pet is killed. So.
Yeah, that's never necessary, people. You never need to do
deranged
that.
werewolves were hurt in this movie.
Renee, what is your pick for us?
So just a quick one, so Steve Gibson doesn't get annoyed at me and hack his way into my matrix. And that is the iStat menu, which is just whenever Apple releases a new generation of silicon, previously Intel, now Apple Silicon M1, it is just my go-to. Bajango, which I insist on calling Biango, just because Mark Edwards is so mas macho, is just a great utility. It puts everything you want to know about your system in the menu bar, so that it's easily accessible. And I will always caution people that benchmark statistics, all of these things are only as good as the tool being used, the person using them, and their wisdom in understanding the difference between those two things. So look at it as information for slice in time stats or slices over time stats, just to let you appreciate sort of what's going on, to give you like a real visual look at what's going on. I love it because I can see like core usage and memory usage and all of those things while I'm doing tests and renders and things like that. And it's impeccably designed as you would expect from Mark Edwards, and it performs beautifully. So it's just been updated. The latest version added support for M1 Max. And if you've ever just wanted a plethora of information, easily accessible at a glance and at a click, even more information, iStat Menu's got you covered.
All right. iStat Menus. Yeah, that's definitely one that, I hear a lot of people talk about being one of the first things they install on a new Mac whenever they set up a new one. So that is a popular pick, and a popular pick for a reason, I think. Yes. Mine is it's a charger. I know, boring, right? But this is one of my favorite chargers, because what's the most annoying thing about having a portable charger? It's remembering to include the cable whenever you are, packing it, or you are quickly looking for something to charge your phone, but you want to keep using your phone. And so then you've got to find the charger in one instance, and then you got to go find the cable that plugs in. It gets annoying. But my charge, I remember, I think, 4 or 5 years ago, going to CES with the company I worked for at the time, Newsy, and my charge was one of the companies there that had these great charging bricks that they called hubs. And the special thing about the My Charge hub is that they go ahead and include the cables as part of the charger. So not only do you get a battery pack, a portable battery pack, but as part of it, sort of built into the design, is a USB-C cable and a lightning cable. And so these are just connected to the device. They do not detach, so you don't have to worry about losing them. And they just slide and sort of lock into place on the side of the hub. And then what I love even more about this is that, normally you'd have to then get a a charging brick to plug into the wall, and then plug the cable into the charging brick, and then plug it into the battery pack. But no, this also comes with the plug already built into the charger as well. So you just plug this directly into the wall and it charges. And then when you're done, you can go ahead and charge your devices. It's got a little option here, a little button here it's the battery indicator. So you can see how much it's charged or how much charging it has to do. Up to 4 LEDs. And then it also has power pass-through. So you can plug it in and then plug a device into it, and it will charge the device first and then charge the battery pack itself. These start at $49.99. They might even be less expensive at times for the smallest version, and they go up from there. So you can get them. Oh, yeah. And look, there's currently a deal. I think that was save 35% was the coupon, something like that. So there's a coupon on Amazon right now to save even more on one of these. But yeah, if you're looking for, I just pop this into my bag. And I mean, we're not going anywhere these days, but really what this is my partner and I will both use this as we are at our, sitting on the sofa or something like that. And we are using our phone in the moment and it needs to be charged. And so you just have this sort of underneath the device and then you plug it in and then you can keep using your phone while it's charging. First world problems in that sense, but one day whenever we do go traveling places again, only having to pack this thing and then you plug it in at the hotel at night and it charges overnight and you're ready to go in the morning. I just think it's great to have all of it right there in one device. So that is the My Charge Hub. And like I said, it comes in multiple milliamp hour capacities. So you can get it in lots of different places, lots of different ways. Oh, well, folks, I believe we are at the end of the show, which means I get to say thank you to our incredible guests. Lori Gill, managing editor at imore.com. Thank you so much. Anything you want to plug? Also, where can people, go to follow you online, all that?
Yeah. I mean, you can find me at Appaholic on Twitter, APPAHOLIK. You can find me at Lori Gill, most of the other social places. And please check out iMore. We've got all kinds of great how-to guides that will help you get through the holiday season when you get your new devices. I'll have a MacBook Pro with M1 chip review up probably in the next 2 days. So you can keep an eye out for that.
Awesome. Yes. And honestly, iMore has already saved my skin a couple of times with needing to get some things fixed. So I'm always appreciative that I can do a Google search and then I go, oh, iMore right there at the top. I love it. And also the way that, if I can't help a family member quickly, I can usually find an iMore link to send. That's so nice. So thank you for all the awesome work you're doing there. Renee Ritchie from the Wild Lands of Canada yonder. I don't understand. I don't get Canada, apparently. I'm sorry, but I do get you.
There's snow on the ground.
Oh, snow outside, but I hope you're warm indoors. Is there anything you'd like to pitch? And of course, where can folks find you online?
Well, I'm not as warm as I used to be because these new Macs aren't space heaters. I used to just rely on my Mac to keep me warm on the cold winter nights. And now I've been running this on battery. It's gone down from 90% to 40%. Wow, just using Skype. But it has been cold and zero fan noise. So I'm going to have to actually buy a pocket heater. Apple's the worst. Nothing to pitch other than youtube.com/Renee Ritchie. I just put up a 8 gigabytes versus 16 gigabytes explainer because it is literally the most frequently asked question I have ever gotten in my life. I think only entirely because nerds who blissfully ignored the low-end Mac models previously and only ever bought the high-end are now suddenly trying to see if they can sneak in an M1 machine as a bridge before the higher-end Macs get updated, and are trying to figure out if they can save a couple $100 by going with 8 gigabytes. So it's exploding all our mailboxes, and I'm doing my part to help.
I appreciate that. And I liked your recent video where you kind of responded to many of the early hot takes on these M1 chips. That was a really good video.
Hot. So spicy hot.
Spicy. And WGBH's Andy Anatko, where can folks find you and what have you got to plug for us?
Well, I'm off WGBH this week because of Thanksgiving, but I'm back on my usual time, which is turning into Thursday at 1 p.m. for about a half hour. You can go to WGBHnews.org to stream it live, or hit it back at about a couple hours later. They usually break out my tech segments, and you can actually search for my name and find it. And elsewise, you can just find me on Twitter and Instagram. I'm Ihnatko, IHN as in Nancy, A, T as in Tom, KO.
Excellent. Well, folks, I am Micah Sargent, of course, not the usual host of MacBreak Weekly. Leo is out this week, but it has been my great pleasure joining you this week. You can check out my other shows, iOS Today, which is just right before this one, Tech News Weekly, Hands on iOS, and Smart Tech Today, all here on the Twit Network. Or head to chihuahua.coffee, CHIHUAHUA.coffee, where I've got links to all the places I exist online. MacBreak Weekly records live every Tuesday at about 2 p.m. Eastern, which is 11 a.m. Pacific or 1900 UTC. That's one way to watch the show, so you can tune in live, twit.tv/live, but the best way to watch is to get it when you're ready for it, and the show is published. So you just do that by subscribing. twit.tv/MBW will get you there, where you can subscribe to the show in both audio and video formats on whatever podcast platform you're using. Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, wherever you are, you can get the show right there. So be sure to subscribe. And now it is also my great pleasure to say, get back to work, because break time is over. Goodbye.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? I am Ant Pruitt, host at Twit TV. Got a question for you. Have you gotten tired of how bad your photos are looking every time you post them to Instagram? Better yet, have you gotten yourself a new camera and you can't quite figure out why the images just don't look that good? Well, I have a solution for you. It's my show, Hands on Photography. Each and every Thursday, I sit down and share different tips and tricks that are going to help make you a better photographer and a better post processor. So subscribe today at twit.tv/hop to learn more.